Running Wild with Christine, Sex, Success, and Other Slippery Rabbit Holes. Episode 11 on Self-Love and Sex Therapy with Dr. Shannon Chavez. Hi, and welcome to Running Wild with Christine. You know who I am and what we do here by now, so please subscribe, like, comment, follow if you want to hear more. Today I'm here with Dr. Shannon Chavez. She's a clinical psychologist and certified sex therapist based in LA. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me today.
I am super excited to have you on today. I got in touch with Shannon because of the work she does in sex therapy and her mind-body approach and a lot of cool content that she already has online on her website, which you'll find in the description. So today to start, we could, I've talked in previous episodes about how difficult it was to explain to my family and friends about why I thought it was important to talk about sex, write about sex, and make it an important part of my life. So I'm sure this is a very familiar story to you in choosing to become a sex therapist.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think I'm still explaining it to a lot of family members who are really absolutely not sure what a sex therapist does or why someone would want to be a sex therapist. But I think for me, it was always something that I was interested in. I mean, who isn't interested in sex? It is this one topic that is so taboo. And as a child, I grew up in a conservative family, and we weren't really allowed to talk about sex. If the topic came up, it was really hushed. Or I remember really different that my brother and I would receive. You know, we would be watching a movie, and if there was a hot, sexy scene, they would tell me to close my eyes and for him to pay attention. So these type of messages and things I learned in school, I was always really curious. And I think at a young age, I knew that sex was a topic that people were uncomfortable with.
Yes.
And the more I worked and got different experience, in college, I started working in a hospital, and I worked with a lot of women around issues with postpartum and sexual health. And I became so interested in it. And I really wanted to go into medicine, but then transitioned into psychology. And again, coming from a conservative Latino family, therapy was also taboo. So here I am, sex and therapy, two very taboo topics. But for me, it just felt like a natural fit. Every time I would do a training or started into my doctorate program, I really wanted to make sexual health and human sexuality a big focus of my work. I mean, I knew early on I wanted to work with couples.
Yeah. I was just saying it's a crucial thing. And I think it's, when I was like a teenager, that was one of the paths that I was considering. I don't know why I have this memory of being like, I would love to be a sexologist. And so it's funny how, you end up sort of down the line somewhere near it. But I think it's crucial. And like you said, it's a taboo topic in a lot of communities and in a lot of places.
It is. And I can't believe it is now, even in this day and age. We have the internet, we have all these resources. We're talking about it more than ever. Yeah. But I feel like it's becoming even more because of that, or the messages are still mixed. And that's why I love doing this work. People come in and they feel so liberated to get someone's perspective in a sex positive way. And that alone can be life changing. And that is why I'm motivated to do this work, because it really is as easy as talking about it. And that's really promoting my therapy can be just having a really nice conversation about sex, or what to do or what not to do, or what you're confused about, getting good information. So it really inspires me to reach as many people as I can, giving them good information, good, accurate information about sex.
Absolutely. And you said, so you work mainly with couples?
I work primarily with adults of all ages, a lot of individuals and couples. When I first started this work, I was really, really motivated to work with couples, because I thought sexuality, coupleship, I had known a lot of people that were married or divorced, and I just figured sex is going to come up, and it's going to be a big, important topic. Yeah. And I imagine that's going to be at the core of most issues that couples are dealing with. So how can I help them feel good about sexuality and grow their relationship in ways that will help them, meet their goal, whatever it is they're looking for in a relationship?
Absolutely. And I think that's like a funny concept because, like, I think we were talking about in preparing for this podcast, a lot of it starts just as an individual and your approach to your own body and knowing exactly, the second part is for me, and anyway, that's how I see it, is like the couple part where you have the trust and the communication and everything. But if in the first place you don't know your own self and your own body and what feels pleasurable to you, how are you supposed to make that work in any kind of tandem?
Exactly. You got to learn how to make love to yourself before you can let a partner in. And I always tell women, especially, and I don't know why this comes up more for women. I think we can say culture is a big part of why this is an issue. But a lot of women need to give themselves permission to be sexual with themselves, whether that's masturbation or touching their bodies or looking at their bodies. I find that a lot of women have never connected with themselves in that way. The majority, at least, has never connected, even into adulthood. So I think it's such an important thing to address for women and empower women around getting a good relationship with your body, developing a good relationship with your body. And that can start with just what you're telling yourself. It can start with how you're feeling in your body, just being aware of it. I do a lot of mindfulness training because I think it's really helpful for people to slow down and pay attention to what's happening in their sexuality, or it just zips right in.
I mean, I think it's so in line with everything else that's happening in terms of like being more conscious of our health and of our body, and more and more people. I think 10 years ago, not as many people were focused on going to the gym or eating better, or, it's slowly moving towards the fact that we're being conscious that we need to take care of our bodies because we have them for longer. But the pleasure part is just as important, and for some reason has yet to catch up in terms of like the like you said, the cultural aspect to it. And I think
exactly, that's why I focus in my practice on sexual health and wellness. So I practice here in Beverly Hills, California, and it's a very wellness-oriented city. There's a lot on health and lifestyle, and so what I can do is really implement sexual wellness into overall focus on sexual health. It really does help us improve our overall health and wellness. It helps mood, it helps physical health, it helps health. So there's so many aspects of sexual health that are not just the mechanics of sex, but they're how we're living day to day and how we're embodying our sexuality, our gender, our every aspect of our sexuality. So that is sexual wellness, and it should be a priority for people.
Absolutely, and I loved reading about that in one of the articles that you sent me. It was, I think you were referring to women and sort of the lack of focus that we have, or the lack of understanding that we have of our own orgasms and of our own body. And you tied it in with this body sex workshop that you did. That to me was fascinating. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yes, fascinating and life-changing. So body sex workshops are conducted by Betty Dodson, who is known as the godmother of masturbation. She was a very big, advocate for women to be empowered to take control of their own orgasm. And so her body sex workshops started in the 60s. She carries them on to this day. And so I went, because I'm a big fan of Betty Dodson's, I really wanted to see how she worked. I'd seen videos and read her books. And so I was going as a clinician, but also for the personal journey as well. And I went with one of my colleagues, which was even more, interesting and fabulous at the same time. So the great thing about these workshops is they're simple workshops, simple in the fact that you're there to have an experience. And the main thing that Betty does is she has you enter the workshop nude. Yeah. And everyone is sort of nude. And the first two questions she asks you as you enter this space of all of these women who are strangers to you is, what is your relationship with your body and what is your relationship with orgasm? So right away, you kind of jump into the vulnerability of talking about your experiences or pitfalls or areas in which you want to improve. And it's incredibly bonding. So I highly recommend for women to think about experiences like that, retreats or workshops or or places that they can go into a space with other women, especially other women, because I find it's thing for men to connect on these issues because they really are collective. We have a lot of things in common, and we would never know it unless we put it out there and start talking about it.
Absolutely. And I think that's like one of the main sort of messages of my book and of the podcast and everything is that, as you very nicely pointed out, is learning to be vulnerable with one another. And when you do, it's sort of inevitable. It's like the one thing that I am the most certain of, that when you are in that state of vulnerability, you connect. Like there is no way, no matter what the differences are, no matter how unlikely or how unlike the other person you might be, there is that common experience, especially like you said, between women, that we just don't get to share. We don't have the spaces for it in our day-to-day, unfortunately, yet, sort of to experience it on a regular basis. But it's there. It's the common denominator between all of us.
Exactly. And I think when you're in that space, you do a lot of growing because you're able to validate your own experiences, your own feelings, and have fun. You know, part of body sex that was incredibly empowering, I think, for so many women is Betty and Carlin Ross, who is her partner in these workshops, provide, you know, 3 main segments to the workshops. One is called a genital show and tell, where you actually sit in front of the room nude with a desk lamp shined right on your vulva, and you talk about what you see. You have a little mirror and you talk about what you see, and Betty's there with you, and it's incredibly vulnerable but incredibly empowering at the same time too, because you know, how often do we as women get to look at each other's genitals and talk about them and feel okay about our bodies? It's really something that I think we need more of in order to just feel comfortable with our sexuality and comfortable with our anatomy. A lot of women will think they're not normal in their bodies and look at other bodies and say, oh, okay, like me. So it really does help break down some of those body image or genital shame issues that a lot of women carry with them, that interfere with their orgasm and their sexual satisfaction with partners.
I mean, you're entirely right. I always say this when guys are talking about like penises or penis size, and I'm like, well, you get to see each other in the changing room because yours is outside. Like the only vaginas that we see are from porn, and that's not how most women look, or like, you know, every woman looks differently, so there is no standardization of it. And so I think it's really funny how we don't provide any spaces for that in any part of the culture. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. She's a, you know, one of those people that you meet and that you're instantly sort of friends with, even though you might not know them that well actually, but you feel like you do. And and she was telling me, we met up in London around my book, and we were just talking, and she was like, I said, well, yeah, you know, the book is allowing me to talk a lot more about orgasms and the fact that I had my first orgasm late, quote unquote, late in life, didn't know that was like normal, and that, you know, other people are experiencing more or less varying degrees of orgasm. I had no idea, never been taught anything about it. And she said to me, oh, it's really funny you should mention, because only a few weeks ago I found out that there's actually like terms and studies, because she's on the opposite spectrum of me. She gets them very easily, so she doesn't go to yoga in certain positions because it could, like, you know, and all of these other problems that I never imagined because of my situation with my orgasming. And so it was really interesting to have this conversation. We walked down 3 stops of tube in London instead of getting on board, because we just wanted to keep talking, because it's so rare to have spaces like that. So I'm really glad that that's how body sex made you feel, and then I'm sure that's how people feel when they come and see you. Like, it's so necessary.
Absolutely. And one of the parts of my practice, so in my practice, I offer therapy. I offer sex coaching, which is a little different than therapy. It's more of a solution-focused, skill-building modality. So a lot of people will come in and say, I don't really need the therapy, but I want to learn some skills on how to improve my orgasm, or how to, you know, become a better kisser with my partner, whatever those skills may be. And the other aspect of my practice is doing community outreach. I love workshops for the reason that you're saying. You may find a new best friend or a new group of women that you will bond with for life because you've shared this experience. You've shared this experience of this workshop. And so I do quite a bit of workshops. I did one last Sunday on self-care for women, and it was fantastic for women to just kind of talk about, again, how to love your body, how to honor your body, and how to, maintain our bodies. We talked about body maintenance, which is such a big part of being a woman, whether it's makeup or nails and hair or whatever we do to groom and maintain these bodies of ours. So
Absolutely.
It's really great to have that space as well.
Yeah, I think it's like you said, it is so rewarding when you get to share it with other people. But I mean, I can understand how that could be sort of a daunting environment to a lot of people, and therefore they might prefer therapy or like a therapy lookalike session where you're more sort of one-on-one or in a couple, because I mean, it takes a little while before you're okay with sort of talking about everything that might pop into your head regarding a certain topic. And so I think it's great. Like I was reading the article that you sent me about an orgasm state of mind, and I could see how that's sort of literature I'm used to reading now because I've looked into it so much, and for my own personal development, and then also for the podcast and stuff like that. But I could definitely see how reading some of the orgasm literature out there could have like a very powerful impact on people. So it might be preferable or nicer for them to have you as a support when sort of uncovering all that information. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your approach to the mind-body approach and what sort of the core work that you do is based on?
Sure, absolutely. I started this work, actually one of the first places that I worked was an integrated clinic. So I worked with a gynecologist, and her and I we really started this mind-body approach where we said, anytime you're working with sexuality, you have to address the physiological side, the psychological side, and even the spiritual side, which is really connected to who we are and our identities, because that really impacts how we experience our sexuality and our sexual expression. So my approach now is looking at, I sort of look at a lot of factors when I'm assessing any sexual issue. I'm looking at sociocultural issues, these messages that we receive. I'm looking at, of course, the body, and not just the physical body, but how your body is wired. I look a lot at the nervous system response. When you had any trauma, negative experiences, any of these types of experiences really impact someone's ability to experience sex freely. So my body approach is looking at this global picture of what sexuality is, and the assessment, everyone that I work with has a sexual health assessment, and that is our way to kind of look at the whole timeline of experiences, events, messages, education that has shaped who one is as a sexual being. And I find that that's really helpful in working with sex because it's comprehensive. What I've seen a lot of too in sex therapy and outside of sex therapy is people starting one place and being shuffled around, different providers, different messages, different treatments. And I get a lot of people at that point where they feel really hopeless. I've tried all these things. I'm pretty much determined nothing's going to work. This is my last ditch resort. Let me see if I can, make some movement here. And so those types of cases I think are really great to receive, because I think once you give that more mind-body approach to looking at things, you start to see some movement. And that's really where we heal in our sexuality, is to be able to move out of those patterns, create new awareness, learn new tools. And so that's really what my approach does, is offer that.
And I think you're so right. Even if you look at in general health, basically, of course, I still go to specialists for specialized issues, but nowadays my first reflex is to go to the naturopath or go to someone who's going to be like, okay, tell me all of your issues, versus the regular doctor who's be like, okay, I can only treat 2 things. You can only have 2 things wrong with you per session. You're like, it's not usually how it works, but okay. And so I think it's really nice that we're doing that as well for our sexual lives, because so much of it, like I think as a society in general, we're trained to specialize. We're trained to like see everything in tiny little unconnected ways, when in general everything is connected. And so I think that it's crucial to look at things from a mind-body approach, and to remember, like you said, that you might have a physiological reason why certain things aren't or are pleasurable, but you might also just not be trusting the person in front of you to let go, or there's so many different ways that so many different places where your issues might come from.
Absolutely. And especially us women, our minds are such a big part of our sexual response. And for men, but I think for women, our wiring is a little bit different in how we're programmed in our response. So understanding the relationship between the two, I think, can really help them move through some of these concerns that they've carried with them throughout their life. And so that's an important way to address some of these issues. Like, for example, low libido, low desire. I probably see that issue more than anything in my practice. And I hear women say, I'm just not thinking about sex. And if I'm not thinking about it, I'm fine never having it again. And, out of sight, out of mind. And that's really where it starts. If we're not thinking about it, if we don't have intention around our sexuality, it doesn't exist, and it can die just like anything else. And we have to be very proactive and intentional about making sexuality a part of our life and something that we want in our life.
Yeah.
In any form.
Absolutely. And I think it's funny because I generally have a higher libido. If anyone's read the book, this was not surprising information. But I dated for a long time someone who had very low libido, and as a guy, that was a very difficult thing for him to admit, and a very difficult thing to approach and address. And it made me have a lower libido, because every time I brought up the topic, I was faced with rejection and all these things that I'm not used to facing. And so it's so crucial how, it's a mirroring thing. Like you said, if you're not talking about it, if there is some kind of other barrier preventing you from voicing a want or a desire or a lack of desire, even just the prevention of voicing it, just like ripple effects through everything. Like, I think about it now and I'm like, how was that me? Like, how did that is not me today. It could never happen to me, quote unquote, is what I would say if someone told me that happened.
Right. That's such a good point, because libido issues, and I'm seeing this a lot now as a trend in the practice, is low libidos for males. And I think, again, how society sort of looks at libido issues, right? It's more of a female thing. And again, the gender issues with sexuality. And so men have a lot of shame around it. But I think libido is much more complicated than we think it is.
Yeah.
You think of it as libido, sex drive. And I always tell people, libido is not just your sex drive. It's your entire drive, your life force. We have libido for everything in our life. So if it's suppressed in one area, more than likely it's suppressed in other areas of life. And libido is about kind of getting that fire back everywhere, whether it's in your relationship, in your career, in family life, whatever it is, getting that libido and life up. And believe it or not, the culprits are usually pretty simple. Stress, how we're connecting with others and ourselves. Not having a community can affect your libido. Yes. So it's complicated, but as you're saying, sometimes you look at these issues and we don't think about, incompatibility around libido. And it's, really an energy thing. There are high libido people that can be successful and happy in relationships with lower libido partners. Again, being able to communicate and understand how to navigate those differences, or to be able to say, this doesn't work for me. And that's okay as well, being honest with that and moving through that together. Absolutely.
And I think that you're completely right when you say like the way that we're connected, because I feel like that's probably something that you face a lot as well, is just we're so disconnected from the moment and the present and the place that we're in, thanks to our phones or whatever, the technology around us. Which is, great. It has lots of upsides. But in terms of just being present in a moment and breathing and letting go, that for me, I know how hard that is for me, and I am aware of the fact that I am trying to do this. So if you're already not aware, like, the problem just might seem unsurmountable. So I was really interested when you sent me an example of your embodiment exercises, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do this homework for myself now.
Yes, yes. Embodiment is basically, the simplicity of it is just getting into your body. And I always start with something basic like breathing. Yeah. And a lot of people have self-care practices in their day-to-day life that can help condition bodies to be more embodied, whether it be yoga or any type of exercise, meditation, prayer. But the intention around it and how it fits into sexuality is what I like to make the connection in. Embodiment is about getting into your body, to be more aware of the subtle changes that occur in our sexuality. For arousal, for instance, usually we're looking for a 0 to 60 effect when we're thinking about arousal, right? I'm either not aroused or I'm highly aroused. But what I try to teach in embodiment is these subtle changes, these subtle climbs in arousal are what we want to focus on in increasing your orgasm response or becoming more aroused and excited during sex. So embodiment is really the key tool, and it's something you can use even outside of sex, which is why it's helpful. It can help with stress management. It can help you with your physical and mental health. It's just a great tool to have, and with great benefits, health benefits all around.
Yeah, speaking of things with great benefits, we talked about this the last time we were prepping for the podcast. You were saying that you do work a lot on masturbation as a form of meditation.
Yes, I do.
So in episode 9 that came out a couple weeks ago, I talked to one of my former professors from UBC in Vancouver, who is now married to Debbie Ward, who is one of the only certified people to certify other people to be tantric practitioners with the Authentic Tantra Association in Vancouver Institute, sorry. And he was saying, yes, meditate before you masturbate. And like, it was so funny how I had just had that conversation with you. So I'm really excited for you to tell us a little bit more about self-love.
Yeah, self-love, self-pleasure, masturbation, whatever you want to call it. I know masturbation can feel like a dirty word. Even when I assess it in my practice, I see big eyes. People get really uncomfortable because it's such a private behavior, especially, again, back to conditioning and how we were raised to not talk about it, do it in private, hurry up, quick, get it over with. So masturbation as a form of meditation is kind of reprogramming all of those early ways in which early behaviors, early thinking around masturbation, having to be something private, quick, get it over with, and done. Yeah. So I try to teach sort of a slowing down process, being more aware, being more mindful, and being more kind of loving towards your body. Before it becomes very genital focused, I get people to move in their bodies. Maybe you want to stretch first, or take a nice bath, put some nice oil and lotion on. Really connect with your body. This can be in a mirror. It can be just looking at yourself and incorporating a sensual connection with yourself. And that may be through touch, through scent, through visual, and also evoking the senses. One big one that I use for masturbation is music. Music is something that can evoke positive emotion. It can relax the body. It usually excites us if it's music that we like. So if you bring that into something even like self-pleasure, it can help you relax, help you feel out of the sort of chatter in the mind, focused on pleasure, just pleasuring and relaxing the body. Mm-hmm. So masturbation is a big part of sex therapy because it's really the first and foremost which we want to people comfortable with. We want to get them comfortable with touching their bodies, feeling good about their bodies, knowing what their body needs when it comes to sex. So what do you like? What turns you on? What makes you feel good? So it's basically that. Masturbation as a form of meditation is connecting with your body, slowing down, making it sensual, and having a little bit of fun. fun with it. I mean, come on, we have all these great tools now that we can use. We have great lubes, and I'm working with so many great companies that have products that can make masturbation so much more.
I know you sent me your sex toy priming article, and I was like, ooh, okay, cool. That's the kind of homework I am happy to receive if I was coming to see you. But yes, it's so much more. It's so much more. At the same time, it is so much more accessible because we do have sort of ways to shop for it online, and like you don't have the stigma around walking into a sex shop and getting whatever you need or you want, and it's so accessible. But at the same time, now you sort of don't have to talk about it either, which is like for me the part that I don't like the least about all of the internet purchasing and all of that sort of ghost shopping behavior, because I actually liked going into a sex shop with a friend and being like, oh, did you try this? What do you think about that? This looks weird, or you know, what's this for? But yeah, I'm sure that a lot of people finally have access to it thanks to all the companies you work with.
Right, yes, and that's true. You know, we can get things online now and you don't have to go to a store, but I love what you're saying, because I recommend that for a lot of individuals and couples is go to a store. You know, we have here in Los Angeles some really great places, retail spaces that have sex educators and people there that are trained to talk about these products and make you feel comfortable talking about these products. So they're not there to, you know, make you feel uncomfortable. It's all about getting good information and finding the right fit. And that's what I love. I'll send my clients to these spaces because they can get options and they'll get the right pick. You know, I may recommend a device, but then when it comes down to what you really want or something personal that feels like a good fit, you want to just make sure you have a lot of options. So
absolutely.
There's a lot of great options. It's something you can do even with a partner, because again, masturbation is also something that I incorporate with partner play. You know, mutual masturbation, show your partner how you touch your body, which is such a vulnerable thing for a lot of people. Again, because masturbation is a private behavior, but we should be able to show our partners how we touch ourselves and not feel embarrassed about it.
Yeah, exactly, because how are we supposed to expect from them to know that and do that and better than we do if we're not even telling them how? Like, that always boggles me. And it boggles me because I understand, because I feel it. It's not like, oh, I don't understand why people feel that way. I'm like, no, I totally get it. I'm also just as petrified if someone is like, do that. I'm like, really though? Now you're looking at me. No, this is distracting. but it's such a helpful step once you get over it. It really, really is.
Right, and it's just, again, it's a stigma around it, because if we were to say, you know, oh, I don't want anyone to see me eat, which this is sometimes a common concern for people as well. You know, I don't like to be on a date and eat because I don't want to see, you know, someone to see me eating, and what if I looked funny, and the same sort of thing. You know, we are so concerned and consumed about how we look and how we look to others. We call it spectatoring in sex therapy, you know, this idea of looking at what's going on and how you appear versus really dropping into the sensual experience and the connection of sex rather than what it looks like. So it's a big thing to overcome, but once you do, it can be very freeing and really open you up to new experiences.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because you sent me, I can't remember in which article I read it, but you mentioned about how we mostly are, when we're being sexual, we tend to pull our stomachs in. And I was just like, that is so funny, because when I lost a bunch of weight in the last couple of years, so now I'm like, oh, I don't really suck my stomach in anymore as much as I used to. And then reading that you're actually like, no, that's not very good for your orgasms. I was like, yeah, I should have seen that one coming.
Right, body image issues, it's such a big part of it. Or even, you know, whether it's holding your body in or tucking this in, sucking that in, or even having lights off where you're not even seeing bodies. You know, if I had to do a survey of how many couples that I see that probably are very, you know, lights off, don't look, quickly get under the sheets, you know, there's so many. It really is a big piece still around body shame and how we see our nude bodies. You know, sometimes I'll actually prescribe for couples to be nude in their private space at home without it being sexual. You know, sit at the kitchen table and have a cup of tea or coffee, or, sit on the sofa nude and talk about, past memories or exciting things going on in your life. There needs to be a comfort around just being nude and it being such a natural part of our being.
Yeah, and absolutely, I'm so agreeing with everything that you're saying. I feel like I'm saying absolutely all the time. But it was really funny because I realized that I think in Europe we're more used to being naked. Like there's, I don't know, there's not as much stigma around nudity. But
That's right.
But still, the other day I was, not the other day, a few months ago, I was sleeping with someone new. And after we were finished, I was sitting on the couch naked and just watching something. But I didn't grab a blanket or it was warm day. Like I just sat there and he was like, "Are you always this comfortable or are you comfortable with me?" And I was like, "Ooh, that's a very tricky question to answer because yes, I'm always this comfortable now that I've done sort of the work to accept my body, but also I guess I'm comfortable with you because if you made me uncomfortable, I wouldn't be sitting around like this." But I don't know if you can put that sort of, does my being comfortable depend on the person in front of me? Yes and no, like such a weird fine line.
You're right, it's probably a combination of both because like you said, you've done that work to kind of empower yourself around accepting your body and feeling comfortable and not feeling, even as women, we've always been told to cover our bodies. I know growing up in a conservative family, I remember cross your legs, pull your skirt down, all these messages. I feel like I got this fidgeting, like constantly cover, cover, cover. So when you do that work, you realize I can be open and I don't have to cover. I don't have to, cover my body and feel reserved around my body. And it really is so much of that. And the person around you, obviously, if you have a partner who is covering up quickly or quickly putting his boxers and clothes on, you're going to probably feel uncomfortable yourself. So it really is a combined process of being able to let go, let that guard down and feel comfortable.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it's so nice that we now do have sex therapists and sessions where, this is such a simple thing to say and a simple sort of thing to understand, to just try and sit naked while you're doing something else. And I think we sort of, like you were saying previously to this, like, oh, therapy sounds so scary and it sounds so daunting. It's actually not, like, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be. And that's what I always tell people, sex therapy can sound really daunting, right? I have some people that come in and say, I've never done any therapy and I'm terrified. I don't know what's going to happen here, but I know that I need to do this work. So I always try to preface it that, sex therapy can be really fun because it really is fun when you are skill building and learning more about your sexuality. Even sex education, it's a big part of my practice. It's a big part of my approach. And I know in my experience, I had really poor sex education, like most people. It was reproductive focused. Actually, when I was in high school, one of our sex ed teachers, she's now one of the biggest abstinence-only education program developers in the country. So she was our sex ed counselor at the time. But because of that, I try to make it fun. Why should learning about our bodies and our sexuality be so serious?
Yeah.
I know when I was growing up, sex was so serious, right? It was, don't talk about it. It seemed like it upset people. It seemed to make people extremely uncomfortable. So I had this idea, even up in my training, even in graduate school, where I would see people that said, oh, I want to work with couples, but I don't want to deal with sex issues. I saw the discomfort that it made people feel. And, so that's really what my practice does. Let's make it fun. Let's laugh about it. I always tell people sex can be funny, messy, smelly, noisy, all these things. It doesn't have to be so serious. And it's really great. I know my partner, my husband, he has a great sense of humor. And people always ask, being married to a sex therapist, you have to have a good sense of humor. But I think that's one of the things that we really have in our relationship that I try to teach people in my practice too. Have fun with it. Be able to joke about it. Even if you have concerns, of course, I want to laugh at our concerns, but let's be light about them. Let's not think of them as these detrimental issues that are isolating us or making us feel abnormal in some way. More than likely, I tell people that 100% of us are going to have sexual issues. I have them, you have them, everyone has them. Let's just be okay with that and know that there are a lot of ways to overcome these issues.
I am so agreeing with you. And I think it's especially important now because a lot of the talk in the news and in the mainstream media about sex is so sort of, harassment oriented and negative experience oriented, which is, totally necessary. We need to be having those conversations, but also we cannot go sort of fall down the path of only treating it as a negative topic and forgetting that it's actually a joyful experience and that's what it's meant to be, and that talking in favor of sexy and in favor of the joy of it isn't, taking away from the seriousness of the negative traumas that people experience. And the statistics are mind-blowing. So yeah, we all probably have the negative stuff to deal with at some point in our lives, but that doesn't take away from the light and the joy and the pleasure that it's meant to do. Like you were saying, like a tool against stress and a tool against all these other things that we have and that we should use.
Exactly. I mean, look at the media now. It really is sex negative in so many ways. Even social media, you can't even show a nipple or a body part without being flagged or sent some sort of message. And that to me is really discouraging because it is sending the wrong message. And social media is a powerful platform. I think I'm grateful for it in a lot of ways because it does allow people to be in connection just through the fingertips of connecting through the internet. Yeah. But it also has the agenda and what the role is of social media. They can really deter the message and work that we're all doing to create more sex positivity. So I hope that changes in the near future.
Absolutely. And that's why we still do what we do. And that's why we are here talking about it and trying to, I'm loving Instagram at the moment because I somehow stumbled onto like a really awesome community of strong, open women who are posting things that I can totally relate to that I haven't seen before, like even sort of talking about periods or talking about, and like graphic imagery. And I'm like, thank you. Like, finally, I'm sick of seeing naked women to sell eyeshadow, but not to actually talk about being a woman who happens sometimes to be naked.
Yes, you're so right. People are talking about everything, female concerns, body. It is a really great platform for people to get good information.
But I think we can also point people to your website. It'll be in the description. There's lots of cool stuff on there. And I certainly loved going through it. I think we can wrap up today. We're getting up to our time. Is there something that you wanted to share with the listeners, like something that's that you want to say to wrap this up?
Sure. So I do want to let people know on the website I have a lot of great articles and blogs and good tips and tools. So if you have some time and you want to go through there, you may get some good things that you can take home tonight and use with a partner or solo. So definitely use the resources there. And the website's drshannonChavez.com.
Yes.
And other than that, people can social media as well. I love to post fun, exciting articles or exciting things going on in sexual health or really great products that are out now. So for product recommendations or lubricants and stimulating gels, you name it, there's a lot of good resources on social media and online as well. So be sure and follow me at Dr. Shannon Chavez.
Awesome. I will be linking all of the handles in the description. Thank you so much for your time. It was lovely to chat with you. I hope we get to do this again. And I might be on the West Coast soon, so maybe we'll do a live session.
Come visit us.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, subscribe, like, follow, comment. Give us your thoughts on Twitter, what you want to hear more of, or if you have any questions for Dr. Shannon Chavez or for me. And speak to you guys next week.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.